Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Crystal Maury, and I'm the Director of Programs at the MacKenzie Art Gallery. As is the case with live stream presentations, we are gathering around our respective screens and from various corners of the world. Today, I'm thrilled to be sharing virtual space with you all from my office at the MacKenzie Art Gallery, which is located on Treaty 4 territory in Oskana Kaasasteki, which is otherwise known as Regina. This is the traditional territory of the Nehio, the Saulteaux, the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. On behalf of my colleagues at the gallery, I want to express gratitude to the elders and ancestors, past, present, and future, who have called this place home. As a guest here, I'm grateful for the opportunity to exchange ideas and to learn alongside others with the land, the water, and our community as witnesses. We invite folks to join us in acknowledging where you are today through our event chat features. Today, we are launching Sedimentary Futures, a dynamic virtual exhibition featuring the 5 2024 EQ Bank Emerging Digital Artists Award recipients. The EDAA is Canada's award for critical experimentation in digital media, proudly celebrating its 10th year. Sedimentary Futures extends the MacKenzie Art Gallery's experimental digital exhibition series, designed to provide live, practical, and conceptual testing alongside the development of the gallery's digital exhibitions toolkit and art installation launcher. Conceptualized by digital exhibition consultant Kat Blumke and funded by the Canada Council for the Arts Digital Strategy Fund, Detail seeks to redefine the possibilities of digital platforms for showcasing artistic expression. On behalf of the MacKenzie Art Gallery, we are deeply grateful for support from the Digital Strategy Fund at the Canada Council for the Arts to realize the dreaming, realization, and presentation of this exciting series. It's been an honor to work with my colleague and EQ Bank Senior Curator Shannon Lind, who will serve as co-host for this program. The MacKenzie Art Gallery and EDAA, or EQ Bank's EDAA, are naturally aligned in the goal of supporting interactive contemporary art experiences through means that are experimental yet accessible. In launching our digital exhibition toolkit in 2025, a resource that was instrumental to realizing this online exhibition, we wanted to share tools and guidance that might otherwise seem cost prohibitive or opaque with audiences, artists, curators, and institutions of all scales. Most importantly, we sought to encourage the next generation of artists who already possessed a visionary sense of the future they wanted to see. Tonight, we are especially grateful for the work of digital artists without whom this project wouldn't be possible. Thank you to our award winners, Carmilla Sumantry, Moni Omubor, Studio Ekosi, Francisco Gonzalez-Rosas, and Quinn Hopkins for your exceptional work. And to Kat Blumke and Brendy Lehman for the brilliant design of the exhibition we'll be touring today. And now I'm going to pass it on to Shannon.
Thank you, Crystal, and hi, everyone. Thrilled to be here. So as Crystal mentioned, the Emerging Digital Artists Award is celebrating its 10th edition this year. We started back in 2015 with a very simple question, which was, as we were venturing into digital space as a banking product, what were digital artists doing? Were they facing the same challenges? And yes, they were, maybe not the exact same, but we really wanted to find a way to shed light on artists in Canada who are doing incredible creative and critical work in the virtual realm. So fast forward to 10 years later, we are absolutely thrilled to be doing something that we've wanted to do for a long time, which was showcase these works in an experimental form online. So I want to extend my gratitude to the MacKenzie team and the Detail Project for making this goal possible. And specifically to Crystal as a curatorial collaborator and to Kat as an incredible designer, producer, and curator as well, who helped make this all possible. So really thrilled to be working with this team and to see the works in this really new and dynamic way. So I will just get to introducing the artist properly, and if you can give a little wave as I do so. Um, Starting with the winner of our still image category this year is Moni Omubor, who's a Lagos-born visual artist and designer based in Lethbridge, Alberta. She uses speculative fiction to explore the interconnectedness of Black diasporic realities and post-colonial Nigerian identity. In the moving image category is Carmilla Sumantry, who's a Vancouver-based interdisciplinary artist whose work explores emerging technologies and art through an existential lens, informed by her second-generation Indonesian Canadian heritage and queer identity. In the 2D interactive category is Studio Ekosi, who is Kaylee and Kira Lightning, two Edmonton-based sisters who create narrative games about Indigenous futures. Kaylee is a two-spirit artist and illustrator, and Kira, who is unfortunately not with us tonight, is a PhD student at the University of Alberta. In the XR category is Quinn Hopkins, a Toronto-based artist working at the intersection of urban Indigenous culture and new media, crafting vibrant dialogue between Indigenous history, urban life, and futuristic visions. And last but not least, in the 3D installation category is Francisco Gonzalez-Rosas, a Chilean performance and new media artist based in Chichage, Montreal, whose practice explores existing and speculative crossovers between the body and technology. So welcome all, thrilled to be introducing you. And I really want to thank this group of artists for embarking on a new platform with the award this year and really thinking about how to adapt your work in a critical and experimental way. So thank you for being so game and open to this. So before we dig into each of these individual works, we wanted to give a brief introduction to the theme that kind of unites the works under the title Sedimentary Futures. So as a starting point, wanting to credit the artist who defined the look and feel of the 2024 award, Diana Lynn Vandermeulen. Her project, which is called A Boundless and Radiant Aura, is an XR project that she adapted for various images, moving image, and virtual worlds that we were able to use to promote the award this year. And it offered this really beautiful and rich visual landscape that we could pull ideas from that actually connected really well with each of the works. So we're pitching her cosmic universe as a bit of a digital bog. And it's an environment very rich in abundance, complexity, and depth. So I'll pass it over to Crystal to talk a little bit more about how we develop the theme.
So oftentimes with prize awards, the big challenge is to figure out how to make it appear natural for all of the recipients to be in the same conversation, right? And when I say having it appear natural, I mean like not be creating distractions for your audience so they're aware that these practices are coming together, not necessarily through intuition, but through honor in a way. And, I think when Shannon and I were looking at the work and chatting together, we felt kind of, uh, kind of honored in a sense that the work that we were seeing come forward by the winners already seemed so naturally aligned, seemed like it could exist in a show on its own without very much in the way of curatorial intervention. And so recognizing that synergy in a sense was already in place meant like, well, how do we develop a curatorial framework that doesn't try to distract again from what's already going on in these practices? How can we let the works shine on their own? And so we started to think about the common themes that were emerging, the ones that already seemed so potent and visible. And what we were really getting a sense of was how contemporary world building was taking place in each of these practices, and how artists who were beginning or just at the most exciting point, I think, in their professional practices, we're already starting to think about maintenance and preservation and what that could look like in a conceptual sense. So why the bog? Like, what does a bog have to do with all of this? Well, I think in the public imaginary or the popular imaginary, we might think of bogs as a kind of preservative of their own. They're a space that prevents any natural decay, and they tell a story of lives lived in their vicinity, through their preservation strategies. And collectively, across these practices, we saw an effect of presenting viewers with a kind of approximation of a digital bog. Each of these practices were somehow telling us something about what preservation could look like in the mindsets of their makers. And bogs, in terms of how they come about in the world, like they're formed through pressure, and they enact strategies of collection, retention, and release. And they too can seem kind of boundaryless. So when we think about Diana's work being a boundaryless space, it made sense to connect that with the idea of a bog. Bogs are also composters and incubators, and they host new lives. They host new life forms through breaking down what they would be inheriting. And I can see, and I think Shannon would agree, that within each of these practices, there is a kind of bog methodology at work. And there's resourcefulness that is really promising and exciting to watch unfold in this digital space that's been created. So sometimes curating for digital spaces can really make us reckon with the difference between it and physical gallery spaces or conventional museum spaces. Whereas curating for a white cube or a black box can sometimes encourage us to invest a lot of energy in designing an experience that defies the character of that space. And I speak from my own personal experience because I work largely as a creative who imagines exhibitions for museum spaces. And I think curating within a digital space is liberatory and inherently collaborative in a way that working in a physical space isn't. So we found ourselves considering, how visitors might permeate the metaphorical layers of this bog that's been created, how they might uncover new materials, rich materials that are hiding behind the surfaces or below surfaces, and leaning into the sense of being consumed by the contents, being consumed by the bog space, and yet still being aware of our bodies in this realm. So I think I'm going to hand it back to Shannon, and we're going to start looking at the exhibition together and talking to the artists and getting a sense of how they imagined their work that we're so fortunate to be honoring tonight.
Wonderful, thank you. So we are going to start with Carmilla Sumantry's work, which is titled GRWM. GRWM is an acronym for Get Ready With Me, which references a genre of videos by beauty influencers who transform their appearances online for presumably millions of followers as they get ready to go out. The work was created in response to the relentless cycle of ad-driven beauty recommendations that plague many of our social media feeds, and it features this amorphous, fleshy blob that is essentially cut open, molded, pierced, and adorned, offering this cultural observation on the impact of these trends and the accelerated normalization of extreme body modification. So this voracious life form emerges from a distance and eventually takes over the viewer. And in doing so, it's inviting us essentially to consider how embodiment and self-image are redefined in an era of hyper-connectedness. So Carmilla, I will say that GRWM is such a unique response to influencer videos. And I was hoping that you could elaborate on some of the specific beauty trends that you've either observed or been targeted with via social media, and especially pulling those that might actually factor into this blob, like what can we actually see in the work?
Yeah, I feel like my TikTok feed does have a lot of beauty content. And I think part of that is just being a woman and having that be targeted towards me. But some of the more like invasive procedures that I have fallen down the rabbit hole into just out of like fascination have been like Botox and filler, as well as like skin treatments, like microneedling and like chemical peels and things like that, where there are risks associated, like, and it's kind of, I don't know, like it's a very invasive thing to make these modifications where you are like injecting with a substance or yeah, just like putting like chemicals on your face for the pursuit of beauty. Like it's like there's almost like an opposite kind of thing happening in the process of getting to that end result. And there really isn't like 100% guarantee. And I just find it so fascinating, like the lengths that people are considering going to in the pursuit of that and like what that means culturally.
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely see that, and there's some certain techniques, but it's applied to this really grotesque creature. And so it's really sort of showing some of these negative effects that might happen when we're sort of hyper fixated on our image. And it's sort of shifting the norms of what we're used to seeing, particularly for younger generations. One thing that really stood out to the jury about your work was just how powerful it is in using the grotesque to actually draw viewers in and compel us, and it's sort of flipping that on its side in a way. I was hoping you could speak to some of the strategies that you employed in making the work and how it's also kind of experienced in a parallel way within this virtual exhibition that you're sort of using this grotesque to kind of seduce and disgust us at the same time.
Yeah, I really wanted to capture that idea of the balance between the like seduction and disgust and kind of like the horror and the beauty of it combined. Um, and I think I achieved that through kind of more of an immersive experience. Like the original piece was a 360 projection mapped space, and I kind of tried to mirror that in the digital space as well, but like really becoming immersed in this like otherworldly place where you can kind of experience the work um, in the same way that like while you're scrolling on TikTok or whatever, it's like you're really like sucked in and like focused in on it. And it's like really easy to, yeah, just like go down a rabbit hole of like continuing and like tunnel vision. Um, and then I think the like slowness of the piece as well kind of helps add to that balance where it's not like so like intense on the grotesque side. It's like there's space to like breathe and like also appreciate the little details of like the landscape and stuff like that. Yeah, and then I think, yeah, part of the immersive is also the scale of it and like you really are like transported to kind of a different world and in the virtual space, like I wanted to like maintain that sense of scale and like as your avatar, I think you're like kind of small and just like looking up at like the work in this big space.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really playing with scale, thinking about like your first experience on a small phone, but you get so sucked into that world, and then the way that you've exploited the possibilities of virtual space for this work. Just now that I've seen a few iterations of it in physical space, so I really appreciate that, like being almost sort of absorbed by this grotesque blob, but really seeing some of the details up close as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Okay, so we will move on to the next project. I'm going to pass it over to Crystal.
Okay. The next project that we're going to have a look at is by Moni Omubor, and it is titled The Back Room. It's a triptych of 3D rendered black and white images that investigate the remnants of colonialism in the artist's psyche as a Nigerian person of Yoruba ancestry. Set in an imagined museum and playing with aesthetics of Afro-Surrealism, each panel features selected elements of Yoruba culture. Through the space, though the space is speculative in nature and exists outside of our physical reality, it utilizes Western museum display strategies typically reserved for representing colonized cultures and identities. Moni subverts these tactics to facilitate deprogramming and to question associated narratives, leveraging the boundlessness of a place untethered by time or physical constraints. One of the things that I really appreciated with Moni's work, and something that came through in the juror conversations, was just how still these works are. And Moni's the winner in the still category. So, so being struck by the stillness of the images seems like a win for sure. But without making it absolutely explicit, it was almost impossible to not think about museum culture when seeing these works. And yet, what I took away from this work was a sense of timelessness or stasis that could be productive. It doesn't have to be seen as ominous in a sense. And I thought that was really exciting to see in this work. So, Moni, we have a couple questions for you. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the role that architecture and speculation play in how you approach the spaces that we see in the back room.
Thank you, Crystal, for the introduction and for the questions. Um, I think I could start with speculation before architecture because it kind of leads into it. But I find that the not the best type of speculation, but my favorite type of speculation is usually ones where that aren't too far from reality, in a way that doesn't necessarily um, dream too uh, out of the ordinary, but sort of just warps the reality to, I guess, expose certain absurdities in a way. And I find that with that specifically, in trying to replicate what a typical not a typical museum, but the ways in which pieces of one's identity could exist in such a space. I feel like that's where um, the elements of architecture really became important in sort of representing that, uh, uh, taking elements of typical Greco-Roman architecture used in museums in a way of, um, I guess, presenting as a repository of culture. And in that sense, I find that that's where the type of speculation that I try to explore with my work kind of works out. Um, and so again, like I said, I find that the my favorite type of speculation is ones that aren't too far from reality. And specifically with this work, it's more looking at the thing that is being speculated about isn't that much of a speculation. Um, and it's more just, I guess, like the personification of these objects and what it, I guess, expanding it in a way that makes it glaring how these things uh, exist as pieces of identity as opposed to objects. Yeah. I, did I
The
answer
idea,
the
the
question?
idea of the repository sounds it sounds like there's so much potential in there, right? Approaching a collection or a bank, so to speak, of being material to work with. It can kind of have a potential that it in the wrong hands would sound like plunder or sound like kind of something colonial, right?
Yeah.
But But I also like the idea of us creating our own personalized repositories that we can come back to, or our own image banks that, we still maintain some control over and can reposition to create new narratives. I wonder if you can speak to the strategies that you choose to employ when you're making work, and you can speak to this work specifically, as well as how it's experienced in this virtual exhibition to evoke a personal relationship with Yoruba culture.
Mm. Uh, I find that it's mostly in, again, the well, not the aim, but in looking at the things that I was putting into the spaces, it was more, again, trying to represent them in a way that has life, as opposed to, like you said, the as opposed to just seeming ominous and uh I guess scary, but like it also in a way that explicitly represents um them in a way that might be out of place or alone in some sense, which is exactly what it is in them being in a quote unquote back room. Um, but yes, I feel like that was mostly the way that I tried to approach it, where these objects are being um, perceived as just that. And my intention was to um, again give them life and to show that they weren't just objects, but more actual uh, pieces of one's um, cultural fabric or identity in some sense. Um, yeah, I think that was that was the way in which I tried to look at it.
I think you succeeded in making us see them as living too, in a way that is, um, I think that's part of what counters the idea that they're frozen and not uh, not remembered in a way, right? So even what may exist out of view can still have a livelihood in someone's memory or culture, um, and it feels so topical and such a prescient conversation. So thank you for making work
Thank you.
that makes us think about that. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Shannon.
Thank you very much. So next we are going to explore Mikiwam by Studio Ekosi, which is an Indigenous fantasy narrative game about complex relationships, magic, and post-colonial futures. The work centers on a young woman who recently moved back to her mother's home community, where she struggles with visions she can't control while also navigating strained relationships with her family. After being taken on as an apprentice by a mysterious healer, she learns how to use her unique gift, which is the ability to see people's moods as elements that can be influenced through magical teas. As the protagonist, players embark on her journey to reconnect with her estranged home and ultimately find a place in a fractured and healing world. For this exhibition, an interactive scene from the original game is reenacted or recreated with the same tenderness and gentle humor, and then viewers are invited to play the actual game firsthand in a separate browser. So Kaylee, um, one of the things, I mean, there are many things about this work that really struck the jury, and ultimately earned it the prize in this category, from its striking illustration style to the strong storytelling elements to the use of narrative game design to express somehow both like very personal experiences and worldviews, but also very relatable relationship dynamics. So I was hoping that you could talk through first, I guess, the inspiration for the piece, but also what you wanted audiences to come to understand by playing the game.
Thank you. Um, so kind of I'll talk about inspirations first, of which there are many, both from our personal lives and other creative works, like different games. So like a very clear inspiration that you'll be able to see is this game called Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender, um, where it's a similar concept to Miquam, but you're a bartender in this cyberpunk setting. You listen to people's problems and you make them drinks, um, as well as this novel called Mistress of Spices. Um, it's kind of a combination of both of those inspirations. Coffee Talk is also a similar concept. But in terms of personal experiences, this was also kind of inspired by a lot of our lived experiences as kind of queer Cree sisters who grew up outside of our community, which is in Musqueam, Alberta. We grew up in Ontario, and also a lot of uh, experiences that I think other Indigenous people can speak to as well that have kind of experienced very similar things of this narrative of coming home, which Miquam is the Cree word for home. So that's where that comes from. Um, and kind of how we rebuild after something like the apocalypse. It's a post-apocalyptic setting, which we know that Indigenous peoples have already experienced the post-apocalypse. So it's a story of the colonizer has left. Now what do we do? Like now what? So who's left behind? How do they rebuild? And kind of all of these complicated relationships, familial and community as well. And you can see that in when you play the demo. The uncle character, Oasis's uncle, is this very gruff man. He's very short and blunt, and he has a temper. But in the interactions, depending on which route you go, you can really see the care that he has for her. She's still his family, and so that's kind of what we wanted to show with that in terms of yeah, inspirations.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, there's so much tenderness and love embedded within a lot of like very strong personalities, it seems like. And again, very relatable, even though I come from a very different background, different experience. Um, you also are sisters. The studio is two sisters, so not to say that you have your own complex dynamics, but I am curious a bit about your process in working together as artists. Do you do everything collaboratively? Do you take on different aspects when you're creating games together?
Yeah, so we we kind of have our own roles, but they also intertwine and interact quite a bit. So it is very collaborative process. And while working on Miquam, we were actually in different provinces. So I was in Montreal for school, and Kira was in Edmonton. Um, and so we did all of the collaboration virtually. We would send ideas back and forth, files, and FaceTime for hours, just kind of going back and forth on ideas. Very long FaceTime sessions. And we worked with a lot of mood board apps as well to kind of make these big inspiration boards to keep track of all of our visual references and things like that, and the things that we wanted to be able to represent to kind of focus the ideas. Because yeah, with a lot of our projects, we always end up starting with just so many exciting ideas that we just like we want to have all of them in it, of course. But we always end up having to kind of streamline it and focus in on the specific story that we want to tell with this specific project. Um, so Kira's role is a writer and programmer. She did like the game design, like the mechanics. And then I kind of handled the visual elements, the user design that you see, like the chat boxes and menu screens, things like that. Um, but like I said, we do end up, there's a lot of interaction between those. So we end up collaborating on these roles. Kira will send me scripts and dialogues to kind of go through, see if everything's sounding okay, to give feedback. And I'll send Kira many, many iterations of the visuals because she actually has a really good eye for composition. So it'll just be a lot of those sessions where like, can you move this like down just like a little bit more? Actually move it back up a little bit. Okay, that's perfect. Like a lot of that, which can be really fun. It sounds not fun, but it is fun. Um, and yeah, I do all of my art just on my personal iPad using the app Procreate. Um, and yeah, just starting with something very loose, inspired by something pretty random, like the character of Ivy with the blue hair. She's very distinct. She was actually inspired by just this random character portrait that I had done a few years prior, and we kind of just really liked that character design and just expanded on that and kind of ran with it. And she ended up becoming like one of the main characters. Um, so yeah, we both kind of inform each other's roles. It's not like a super strict, I'm handling all of the visuals, don't touch it type thing. It's very, very, very collaborative and iterative. Yeah,
Wow, that's great. And only sisters can ask each other to move a box up this much and then back down again.
exactly.
Oh, that's wonderful. It must be wild watching your family play it. I'm assuming that they have. Yeah, really interesting just to see like how there's a personal connection in there, and then you've both created that together. Very much encouraging everyone to play the game in full after we break. Thank you so much. So I will pass it back to Crystal to go into our next project.
I love that prompt to encourage us to play that game with others. I know I was personally really excited about the prospect of playing it with my son, who I'm sure would show me things about it that I might otherwise have a hard time finding. And that intergenerational play is really something special. We don't have very many instances where that's encouraged with digital tools. I'm going to introduce, well, not introduce, but like start us talking with Francisco. Francisco Gonzalez-Rosas is our winner in the installation category, and Francisco is the visionary behind this project titled The Museum of the Copy Pasted Identities, sculptural and multi-channel video installation. And it features a series of digital sculptures set within a digital environment based on South American colonial architecture. The work delves into the visual history and legacies of colonialism in anthropological museums, exploring how otherness is produced through both exhibition displays and digital networks. Gonzalez-Rosas crafts a speculative archaeology of the body through photogrammetry, 3D scanning, and CGI-generated avatars, challenging normative approaches to self-representation. The resulting multimedia installation exposes the performativity of contemporary digital self-image making and draws critical connections to strategies of representation within cultural institutions. In this category, we were really impressed by the range of digital tools that Francisco had employed in the making of this work. And, in experiencing the work and keeping in mind, we were experiencing it not in the exhibition context that we are now seeing. We were really taken with how engulfing it was, and the experience was visceral. There was a really clear sense of Francisco's aesthetic sensibility, all of which challenges the conventions of exhibition display technologies in a really refreshing way. So I have a couple questions for you, Francisco, and I'm curious to know how, as an artist who has a practice that extends beyond installation to include performance, you navigate how the body can be an unruly force in your work. How have scopic technologies taken root in your practice, and how do all the bodies, including your body, troubles the order sought by anthropological museums?
Thank you for that introduction, Crystal, and for the question. So in terms of like a practice that moves like across different mediums, I would say that for me the most essential has been performance. I have a background in theater and I did live performance for a while, and then I stopped doing that. But I think that all of my exploration with technology, it has a very significant emphasis on performance because it is always on first person. It's always myself dealing with a certain medium or like a certain technology, and not just like, in terms of the technicality of that medium, but also in terms of what is, kind of like the ideological context of that medium. And I think that's in a way inevitable for anyone, but even more for someone that is racialized, queer, etc. So that's on one hand, and in the case of this work in particular, obviously there is a big emphasis on self-image, and I think that in relation to the work and my observation of like things that go beyond the work and my life and like cultural things going on, the relation between media and performance or performativity, it's very influential of social dynamics that we go through. So yeah, that's on the one hand. And in terms of the technologies, like scopic technologies that you were mentioning, this was the first time that I really kind of like dig in photogrammetry, body scanning, and I haven't stopped using them since. Really doing this work for me was a kind of like a complete redefinition of my work, because what I was doing before was a much more kind of traditional in a way. I was doing video performance, and when there is kind of like an action for the camera, there is still some, well, it depends, but most of the time is kind of like, I would say like a linear relation between the medium and the action, so you will have a type of image that is more naturalistic, quote unquote. And then when you're working with 3D software, that kind of like position shifts completely because the 3D space is ever expanding, infinite, and like kind of like abstract. You can access things from every possible angle. And in my case in particular, when I was doing this work, I did a lot of it on my laptop, and I was almost like on top of it, like I was almost inside of the place, like to like get into some details of the things that I wanted to like do. And I think that kind of like, um, this kind of layout really, really, kind of like disrupts another type of like a more naturalistic, or like we could say normative, like it can be said in many different ways. Yeah, and like to your point about anthropological displays, I think that, well, it's, kind of like, I feel like you could say that is, I think it's kind of like, um, it is kind of like a gesture of like resistance in a way, because um, like the objects in anthropological collections, if you think about them as like the kind of like the symbols of the cultures that were taken from, didn't have a word in those, processes, and actually to be displayed in such ways. So I think that in that sense, I do the conscious decision of putting these kind of like versions of myself. So in that sense, I think it's like, yeah, it's like, it's a sense of like a twisted sort of embodiment or like empowerment, but yeah, that's kind of like what I can think
I didn't
about it.
know about that kind of degree of intimacy you had to engage in with your computer when we spoke about the work initially back in the winter. And like I'm picturing the contortions that you would have to undertake in order to get the kind of record or the data that you were seeking. Do you do you feel like in reimagining this work for a virtual installation environment that there were new challenges that you encountered? Because, you know, you're translating something that was imagined or conceived for a physical space to this other realm. Were there new considerations, new realities that you encountered?
Um, yes, definitely. I mean, it was an interesting exercise because the work is so kind of like heavily reliant on digital tools, but it was really meant for an exhibition physical space. And there was a material, you know, kind of like aspect of the work that was very important for me. Um, and so then, you know, like these kind of like architectural considerations of space, you know, and like the relationalities between like the body of the viewer and the piece, etc. Um, versus this kind of like, you know, kind of like surrealism that the 3D space can provide, you know. So, and I think that that kind of like surreal, or, you know, kind of like surreal, that's the only word I can think about now. It was in some way present in the work, but I guess I just like what I tried to do was to keep these kind of like two positions. You know, I still wanted to look like a museum. I still wanted to look like a gallery, and I wanted to like pieces to be displayed in a way that is recognizably as a quote unquote traditional exhibition space, but also kind of like hinting to something that is more ethereal, and, you know, that doesn't follow the logics of gravity, or like, you know, of like the type of behavior that museum spaces you know, force us to like deal with. Like yeah, that's kind of that's what I can think about.
It's like a normative theater in a sense that we're being asked to uh, to revisit through a different kind of critical lens. It's so exciting. Thank
Yes,
you so much, Francisco.
thanks to you.
Okay, I think we're going to hand it back to Shannon, who will walk us through Quinn's work.
Wonderful, thank you. So last but certainly not least, we will be exploring Stellar Narratives by Quinn Hopkins, which is an augmented reality experience that bridges the gap between Anishinaabe night sky stories and the city. The work showcases the constellations that have guided Anishinaabe wisdom for generations, which adapts over time. With each season, a new chapter unfolds. Hopkins uses augmented reality as a new way of sharing stories, connecting audiences to the oral traditions that have long shaped Indigenous knowledge, and in inviting urban Indigenous people to look up and rediscover the ancestral stories etched into the stars above them. The work serves as a reminder that the wisdom of the land is still present, even in the heart of the city. This piece has been adapted for the virtual realm to function as a browser-based experience using elements from its original site, which is the Evergreen Brickworks in Toronto. So Quinn, this work stood out to the jury for many reasons. One being its ability to use augmented reality to reveal layers of knowledge and insights that are not known, things that are not immediately visible, while still rooting people in physical space in a beautiful way. I was hoping that you could elaborate on some of the main ideas rooted in Anishinaabe storytelling that the work is attempting to convey to the audience.
Yeah, thank you for that description and introduction, and for the question. The the work, I mean, sometimes I Kaylee mentioned it, but as Indigenous people, we view ourselves as this post-apocalyptic society, because for us, you know, the cultural genocide that happened forced a lot of us to abandon our cultures or not understand them anymore, and to not know these stories. And you know, as a reconnecting Indigenous person, Anishinaabe person, the work to learn these stories again and to tell them it's a long process, and it's a lot of learning, and it's also a very beautiful path to take, and I think a very courageous path to take for a lot of us. And so these stories, you know, they come from that post-apocalyptic point of view where the stars in the city aren't as bright as they are out on the land, and that kind of mirrors this narrative of our stories maybe not being as told as loudly as they once were. So by bringing it back to the city, and by allowing residents of the city here to explore and see the sky from our point of view, allows, you know, a space to be created where we can share other perspectives that you know, maybe aren't as talked about. Like I know many of us know the, you know, Greek or Latin constellations that everyone talks about, their star sign and everything, but it was really interesting and wonderful to be able to do the research and listen to the elders talk about the stars from the Anishinaabe point of view. And there's so much beauty about the way that these stars tell stories. So for example, like the Nanabush constellation that signifies the start of summer. Nanabush has so many stories. He's a trickster. He's a sort of demigod of the Anishinaabe people, that, you know, he went around naming all the plants and all the animals, and he's seen as like the start of this time of abundance, and so that's why he represents the summer. And there's stories for every season. So the piece kind of tackles that by having the 4 main constellations for the 4 main seasons, and then there's this like cyclical nature of time, where there's also the 28-day cycle of the moon. So every day that you enter the augmented reality piece, or every time you look at it, it'll show the correct moon phase for that time of day, or for that day. And then you can also use the calendar user interface to change that day, to explore what, you know, another time would look like, and then that gives the user some ability to explore all the different times, and the different stories. But also I don't want to like give away too much, and I like this sort of ambiguity. And often when I'm like out on the land with an elder, or like trying to learn, it's not always like force fed to you or anything. It's often more relaxed, and like, look at this plant and tell me what it does, or like what it tells you. And then through that conversation, you learn more about that plant than you would if the teacher was just teaching it to you. So that's kind of the storytelling that I like to imbue in my art, that like more of a space to create conversations and react to than to be like just a common observer. You become a collaborator or like a participant in the work for a moment. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, it's not, it really invites exploration. It's very generous in that way. And part of, I mean, there's again so many things that we all really shared an interest in with the work, but um, just feeling rooted in place, which digital art doesn't always make you like feel in your body necessarily, or kind of physically activate you in that way. And by not fully understanding what you're looking at, you're encouraged to engage more. And that's not always the case either. So sometimes you can feel alienated by things that don't just tell you what it is, but in this case, you feel very compelled to explore and kind of engage with the symbolism and also, again, just anything as someone who lives in a city, anything that can help me remember there's stars above me is a really nice thing to have as well. Um, I wanted to talk about that role of place and physical connection in your work because it's something that feels very present. And I was hoping you could kind of speak to that in relation to this virtual exhibition and the fact that people are essentially tuning into this experience from, potentially all over the world. We are also touring the physical exhibition across Canada. And so how does place factor into your work and what is it like to experience this? And maybe you could speak a little bit to kind of the physical site it might be referencing here.
Yeah, the piece itself came together as a bit of a collaboration between me and a close friend who's a curator as well, another Anishinaabe curator. And she was working at Evergreen Brickworks and reached out to me and was like, we have the perfect spot for you and you got to check it out. And I checked it out, and there were these beautiful brick walls with graffiti from the 90s written all over it. And I instantly felt this special sort of like place that, Evergreen Brickworks is very special because it's the brick factory that built Toronto, basically. Like all of those red bricks and all the old buildings came from the Don Valley there. And now it's been reclaimed as a as a bog or a marsh. So it's like this beautiful marsh. You can go walk around there, bike or whatever, and see like tons of wildlife and beauty. It's really a gem of the city. But creating a piece of art there, like it felt like the right place for me because I've always been a bit intimidated by the white cube or the black box in a gallery, and it's always felt too sterile for me. I love being able to show my art out in public, and I mean, I've been very fortunate with even this touring exhibition, to be able to show my art on that beautiful window out in Calgary, and explore different ways of showing this piece within the city. So this is really exciting to be able to show it in a virtual space because instead of being in the city, I get to do the opposite of that. And now when you view it, you're surrounded by trees and the night sky over top of you. So it's kind of that like, and even in Evergreen Brickworks, there's two murals, and one is of the city in the night sky, and the stars are a bit dimmer, and then one is in the bush, and the stars are brighter, and they both like are meant to interact with each other, but like I think being able to show that like the opposite side of things within a digital space, which is like kind of the opposite. There's a bit of a push and pull of themes and ideas when you're like going into a natural space within a computer, which I think works really well with the theme of this whole show, being in the digital bog, being able to like explore this natural cyclical event in a very digital man-made way is really interesting and cool. Because I love how sorry, I'm just rambling now. I love how technology can be used to preserve like culture and ideas like this, and even preserve like a love for nature and our sort of the way we're drawn to nature as people, because we are part of it all, and it's all of our relations, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really connects well to the broader theme, and it, like, yeah, you said it really well, just like sort of the motivation for the award, why everyone's making in this space is it's not just a blip in history, it's something that is like how we communicate and relate to each other now too. And so trying to think about how we preserve that and honor it, and not think of it as like in opposition to natural or whatever that means, or the natural environment. So um, yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to hear you speak about the work. And similar to all of the works, I encourage everyone to take that journey, get launched into another browser to experience the augmented reality piece. So we are going to move on to our Q&A. If there are any questions from the audience, Crystal and I can field those. Feel free to pop them. I believe there's a Q&A chat function. Or if anyone who's present on the video panel here has questions for each other, please feel free to jump in as well. No questions yet. I'll start with one just for anyone who wants to jump in. I'd be really curious, assuming that none of you have necessarily done a virtual exhibition before, or like had to adapt a work for an existing work for this space. I'd love to hear your thoughts on just how, like, what the experience was like, and um, whether it's something you would consider doing in future, or whether it would be worth almost like starting from scratch and dreaming in a space like this. Because again, I feel like there's a bit of a guinea pig element happening here of pushing pushing everyone into that. So
I'll just share that after seeing some of the other artists' work, I wish that I had incorporated more like 3D elements. Like I think that was so creative, to like take advantage of the virtual space in that way. Whereas I was just thinking like, how can I kind of recreate the gallery environment? But there's definitely an opportunity to push it to like another level.
yeah, and that's, I mean, from what I've seen of virtual exhibitions, I think if Kat could jump in, she would have probably many examples, but I see that more often than not is just recreating the cube. And in some cases it works, but it is sort of really nice to see, with detail, just there's capacity to do a bit of everything, and really exploit that and sort of like remove the walls and feel like you're part of the work in different ways. But the way that you played with scale is something that, like, I think really enhanced the experience. So even though it is sort of still a panorama and your body is separate from it, it just, I feel like it's really distinct from what I've seen in person. So you've still been pushing the boundaries.
Thank you.
I do want to, like, this is so inspiring, this exhibition, because it's been something that like I've been striving towards creating on my own for maybe the last like 6 months, as I am like already creating in sort of a 3D web space with augmented reality, especially because mine's like web-based augmented reality. I'm already coding or like creating in a language that could create like a digital gallery or a 3D digital space. And this is just so inspiring to push me to like kind of expand that world building and build out that world that like I envision in my head as well. And like the way that this is presented, it just shows the potential that like there is for creating a space like this. It's really cool.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's wonderful. I hope you do, and I believe detail would be available for you to use to do that. So you do not have to build it from scratch, which is a huge benefit to anyone wanting to get into that space. Oh, there you are. I want to can we give Kat a round of applause for navigating through the beautiful exhibition in addition to making it. Um, thank you for driving us through tonight.
There you go. The audience might not have been able to hear me for a minute, but I do have some other questions. Now, I think this should be fine. I just want to double check levels. Kind of recreate the gallery. We do have some questions in the chat, which is after winning the EDAA, has anyone else been inspired to go into any new directions with your practice? Sorry, did the audio come through? Okay, right, sorry, maybe if anyone wants to speak first, hands up, that's a bit intimidating.
Yeah, when I first started creating 3D art, digital art, I was picturing myself going more in the direction of like motion graphics and more commercial work. And so winning this award was very validating for me as an artist, like seeing more potential in my fine art career. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
I have to say, I'm really happy to hear that you've defected from the commercial world because of this, or maybe.
Trying, yeah.
I've been super inspired, like you guys have just said, especially by this virtual exhibition was, yeah, just like so inspiring. Seeing the ways that the works were not just adapted to like a 3D kind of landscape, but like expanded on almost, which is really cool. And as someone who's mostly done kind of 2D illustration type works, it's been super inspiring to make me want to like branch out into more 3D interactive kind of works. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a while now, and I've kind of dipped my toe in a little bit, but this has really kind of brought that interest back a lot. So that's something I'd really like to expand my work into is start experimenting with 3D works and animation and that type of thing. Very inspiring.
Can talk too. So for me, it's well, I would like to say that it was very interesting to hear everyone talking about their pieces because obviously we've seen the pieces, but hearing the authors and their ideas and all of that behind it makes it much more exciting. And in my case, I think that this piece in particular is kind of like a standalone piece in my practice, you know, it's like there's nothing else that looks like this of what I've done. And I feel like the intersection between, you know, kind of like anthropological or like this kind of like museum apparatus and digital, it's kind of like something that might be worth to continue exploring. I don't know exactly in which way yet, but yeah, it does seem like, I don't know, I've been thinking about it in a new project and I'm like, well, maybe I can do a second museum, like something like that, like something that maybe I could continue exploring, I don't know, forever, maybe. Um, yeah, but if it feels natural, obviously, I don't want to push it to just like, okay, let's do the second version. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, I hope you do. And Kaylee, I hope you also get into the 3D world. Highly encourage.
I could speak as well. I find that I think a lot of what I've taken away is in seeing um the the room for certain stories to be told. And um so I find that my interest has leaned more into the type of exploring more of the type of stories that I'm trying to tell. Um, uh, whether it be specifically within uh, virtual spaces, using 3D or not. But yeah. Hmm.
Are there any other questions?
There is. I wasn't sure if everyone had gotten a chance to speak. Yeah, just really excited. I hope it's been super fun to work. Is just tacking onto Moni, like the ability to kind of expand your already existing 3D work into like the interactive component. It's been super fun. It's been fun to unpack everyone's projects and see their process behind the scenes. And I mean, Francisco, you could certainly keep working. You had enough assets in that file to keep working on them forever. So. But another a question from the chat, and I think this is really interesting, thinking about the touring nature, Shannon, as you mentioned earlier, of this show. We had someone asking if anyone has thoughts about the accessibility of digital versus in-person exhibitions. I know, like some of perhaps in the context of this work or this overall exhibition, that is the virtual experience. We're all coming at it from different locations. I was able to meet everyone in January at the awards ceremony, but with the touring exhibit, it hasn't been possible for everyone to attend. But and maybe this is something that can be answered by both the curators who are working to bring these exhibits across the country, but also also from the artists. I think it's an open question. So, what are your thoughts about the accessibility of the digital exhibition versus the in-person EDAA shows?
Well, I can start just from the organizational part of it. I mean, this is why it's been like a goal of ours for so long, because before this year we would only have an exhibition in Toronto, and so that was ignoring, most of the country. Or, I know Toronto's a populous city, but it felt like it wasn't inviting because we are a national award. And so as a result, I feel like we tend to get a lot of applicants from Toronto, and therefore a lot of Toronto people win the award. And so that we really do want to, find avenues to kind of spread that out, encourage people. This is a great range of artists from across the country, I have to say. Um, but yeah, there's other possibilities in that it's not relegated to Canada. We get to, like, through this virtual exhibition, It can be distributed for people to visit many, many times and really take time with the work in a way physical space doesn't really allow. And sort of on your own terms. So, maybe these are just obvious comments, but like a lot of physical spaces don't feel very inviting, and then there's actual barriers for many people to attend. And then I do appreciate even just almost kind of back to Carmilla's thinking about the project of like we're still so like I am still I think in physical exhibition format, and then with this one even being able to show the works for a really long time. It's not relegated to like a 1 month or month and a half presentation schedule because we don't have the same restrictions. And so again, I really appreciate that. Like there's just so many things that get offered as a result through this. And yeah, the ability to float versus feeling like on the ground the whole time is also really great.
I can maybe add a little bit to Shannon's observation in that as a curator who works primarily in physical spaces and real life spaces, um, I tend to not approach work thinking that it has to be only in this space. And I think what's been revelatory about this process of getting to know the artists and uh, collaborating on facilitating an ideal space or respectful and like visionary space to contain these works is to also imagine that that container is not the only container they can exist within, right? So, just despite us experiencing these works, or though we're experiencing these works in a digital container now, that's not to say they can't be woven into other types of experiences. And it's exciting to imagine what that could look like for all sorts of other kind of curatorial visions, whether they be folks who've been watching the award and seeing how kind of influence and growth is taking shape in the artists, or folks who are just joining us for today and thinking, so-and-so's project would be an amazing fit for what I'm working on. So we'll be watching how other opportunities come forward for the artists.
Yeah, if anyone had thoughts about this, I think, Kayla, your work is already available online. Quinn, yours was adapted to this web browser version, so you made it much more accessible for specifically this exhibition. I know that it's been a real pleasure for us, like myself and the developer Brendy, to work on these projects. I would also love to invite audiences at this time to actually join us on the server, which I'll just navigate over unless there's any further comments from the artists. Does anyone want to say? We're good. All right. Well, let's hop in and have a party. So one moment as I'm just switching things up for folks at home on their view. So if people join me, if people can join me back on if you use your internet browser to navigate to the MacKenzie's website, which is mackenzie.art. Yeah, great. Shannon has listed it for those folks in the Zoom. But we have the project accessible. It's easy to find it through our digital art section right here. And then this website, which will contain all the information about the artists and their artwork, launches directly into the exhibition with the link below. And now you'll actually be able to see folks joining the server. So things that were the view that you saw earlier with me in this space. It'll be, oh, 1 second, just gotta load around for the yeah, just navigating through the different spaces. So for folks at home who are viewing, the exhibit Get Explored by Me earlier, you will now be able to join it yourself. Just go to tab into the right frames. You input your name once it's loaded on. Use the sliders to navigate through your options of avatars. I'm particularly a fan of this one. And join us then. You'll be logged into the lobby, so I can already see there's other folks here. And that concludes the tour for us over here. Oh yeah, oh there's such a good party. Here, I'm just gonna hop back in. Oh, such a great party. So many windows. This is the part. Let's join everyone for a little, yeah, join me on the main bog. So hop through that portal that says enter the exhibition and you'll be redirected to the central bog. Yes, perfect. There we go. Now this the exhibition is going to be running until December. Is that correct, Shannon? Okay.
Until December 17th.
So definitely come check it out. Check it out at different times of the day. Maybe you'll get more friends to hang out with in your stay. But yeah, that is, I think that concludes everything for the tour today. It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful being able to work in this space. I think the audience can see the little EDAA 10th anniversary logo in their view now if they look on the street. This is just making sure people see that. It's been great to have witnessed the emergence of this. Oh my gosh, the dawn is happening as I say this. The dawn and the exhibition is occurring. But yeah, it's been great to be a part of the exhibition from the building perspective, and having also witnessed like many years of exhibitions at Trinity Square Video, and then just how the prize has evolved since then, and all the and to see where some of those early prize winners are now in their careers has been really exciting. And I encourage everyone to come hang out with us and get lost in the bog and in the artworks as well.
Thanks, Kat. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you all. We will be wrapping up for tonight.